Afternoon, Committee on Finance will come to order. We have one agenda today, 1 p.m. agenda, starting with House Bill 1536, House Draft 1, which is the judiciary budget. First up, it is the judiciary, Mr. Mick.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and committee members. Because of the long agenda, the judiciary will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Legal Aid Society of Hawaii.
Aloha, Nalani Fujimori Kaina, Executive Director with the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii. We will also stand in our testimony on support, but happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Volunteer Legal Services Hawaii.
Rich Figueroa, in support of House Bill 1536 and HT1. We also stand in our testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last up is Hawaii County Bar Association, Mr. Rorig.
Madam Chair, if it please the committee, we have a lengthy testimony from our president, Michelle Orishi, and I am testifying on her behalf regarding the budget. We appreciate the content of the budget as it's before your committee. The changes have been made in the Judiciary Committee and your committee, and we'll stand on our testimony. The Hawaii County Bar Association represents 180 lawyers. Most of us are here in East Hawaii. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers for this judiciary budget. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1539, House Draft 1. First up, it is the judiciary.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Pango-Grass, and I'm testifying in support of House Bill 1536, which is part of the Judiciary's administrative package. This bill is important for the security of Hawaii judges and specified judicial officers. Sorry, my lights just went out. In 2021, federal judges were the target of more than 4,500 threats and other inappropriate comments and communications. Threats and inappropriate conduct against our own state judges and judicial officers have escalated in both number and severity in recent years. Our testimony details some of the security issues that both judges on the mainland and here in Hawaii have experienced in recent years, from death threats to a Hawaii judge and social worker with the Office of Public Guardian, to the shooting of a judge's husband and killing of her son in Illinois by a disgruntled litigant who learned the judge's address from the internet. House Bill 1539 has three components. First, it prohibits those who have an intent to intimidate or threaten from posting on the internet any personal information of state or federal judges and other specified judicial staff. Second, it provides steps for removing that personal information from the internet. And third, and probably most importantly, it establishes a task force so that government offices and other entities can collaborate on the next course of action to protect judges and judiciary staff. This task force can then make recommendations for appropriate further legislation. Our own federal judges, Judges Clifton and Seabright, have testified that judicial security is critical to our democracy and the rule of law. Judges and judicial officers must make decisions and fill their duties without fear of intimidation or threats or harm for themselves or their families. And this bill is an important first step in ensuring that they may do so. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kahea Faria.
Aloha mai kākou.
Uh,
I just want to confirm this is HB 1870.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, you're on the next bill. Sorry, that's my mistake.
No
Good
problem.
call.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. That was all the testimony for 1539. Any questions, members?
Question.
Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
For judiciary, the bill talks about only sitting full-time judges. Aren't you missing out on many others who are not full-time?
I mean, conceivably, they could be placed in there, but we decided to make it, at least initially, for just full-time judges. And not per diem judges,
But,
because per diem judges actually have other positions, beyond being, sitting on the bench.
right, but I mean, they would be subject to threats as well, wouldn't they?
That's possible as well. In their capacity as judges, that would be.
Yes, of course.
Right. We would have no concerns about changing that definition.
Okay. Would they be considered sitting judges?
They would be considered sitting judges, but they would be per diem, per diem judges as opposed to full-time judges.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, Representative Martin.
Thank you. A question for Judiciary. I've been talking to Child Welfare Service and they have similar concerns, which I'm not suggesting you include in this bill, but just they were asking about TROs and streamlining that process. Is that something that you folks have used or consider as well?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Streamlining TROs for.
Yeah, so temporary restraining orders against
Right.
those that are threatening or harassing. Is that a tool that is useful in this situation or not?
Yeah, always TROs are available. And this is a different situation, I think, but a TRO is always available if somebody is harassing somebody and they want to bring an end to it and bring it to the attention of the courts.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1870. And with that, it's Kaya Faria. Aloha.
Aloha mai kako, House Committees on Finance Chair, on Finance. Aloha Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, and member, I am so sorry. We have a new chair, Vice Chair Yamashita. Aloha. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony and feedback to this very important bill, HB 1870. I stand by my written testimony in support of HB 1870 that addresses Articles 10 and 15, Sections 4 of the 1978 Hawaii State Constitution, specifically promoting Olelo Hawaii. In an effort to honor those two articles, I am recommending that we add this language of utilizing the technical terminology found in government documents and political discourse found in the newspapers during the 1800s. And that's to provide the Hawaiian language basis for the continuity of this work. I've provided an example in my written testimony for your consideration. Mahalo nui for the opportunity to provide testimony today. Mahalo, aloha.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers. Any questions, members? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 2365. First up, it is the Judiciary.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Michelle Acosta. I'm the Deputy Chief Court Administrator for the First Circuit for the State Judiciary. We stand on our written testimony and am available for any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Department of Transportation.
Aloha, aloha, Vice Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee. The Department of Transportation is in support of the measure. And in the interest of time, we would like to stand on our testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Honolulu Police Department.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Acting Captain Andre Peters on behalf of the Honolulu Police Department. Stand on our written testimony and support, and we'll answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 886. First up, it is the Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Karen Inagaki, Deputy Attorney General. The department strongly supports this bill. Every government employee generally has a qualified privilege already as long as they're not acting with malice or an improper purpose. But in the Slingluff case, the Intermediate Court of Appeals made a distinction between regular employees and professional employees. And in this case, there were physicians of the Department of Public Safety. And they held that the doctors were exercising medical discretion, not governmental discretion. So they weren't entitled to the privilege that every other employee already has. So that created a problem because now that analysis would apply to every professional employee, and they would not get the privilege if they were exercising their professional discretion. So that would apply to doctors, accountants, engineers, and every government employee who holds a professional license. The Department of Public Safety, their physicians and medical personnel were understandably concerned. So in order to meet their concerns, the department purchased insurance for them, for the medical employees. But that would not be feasible if the state had to purchase insurance for every single government professional employee. So what this bill does is protects those government employees who have professional licenses as long as they're acting in the course and scope of their employment. We would ask that that this bill be passed, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Hawaii Association for Justice. Mr. Owe on 886.
Oh. Hello, Chair. So apologies. I was running into some technical difficulties on my end. We stand on a written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1462. First up, it is public defenders.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. James Pavin with the Public Defender's Office. We stand on our written testimony in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. This is part of our legislative package, so I want to just thank the committee for hearing this bill. We are in support of House Bill 1462, and we will stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1447, House Draft 1, DNR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator for the Division of State Parks, and we stand on our written testimony providing comments. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next up is Tamara Fulton. No, not there. Hawaii Association for Justice.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Evan Oe on behalf of Hawaii Association for Justice in opposition. The immunity from civil liability covered under this bill is unnecessary, as Act 181 of 2018 already provides protections that this measure is trying to achieve. Lifeguards, just like all other state employees, are already protected under the State Tort Liability Act, which states that lifeguards are entitled to a defense by the AG's office for any civil action brought in any court against any county based on an alleged negligent or wrongful act or omission. Further, Hawaii law requires that all first responders, such as EMTs, police, and firefighters, perform their jobs with reasonable care under the circumstances. Lifeguards should not be granted a carve-out to prevent them from being responsible if they are negligent. There is no public policy justification for condoning negligent job performance by any government employee, nor is there any justification for treating lifeguards any different from other first responders provide equally dangerous life-saving services. HHA has always maintained that giving lifeguards immunity for performing their duties in a negligent manner is bad public policy and compromises safety for residents and tourists alike. To be clear, HHA is not against lifeguards or lifeguard services. In fact, our lifeguards have been providing exemplary service for over 100 years and are among the best and most dedicated in the world. HHA is not aware of any instance when a lifeguard has lost personal assets because of services performed in the course of their and scope of their duties. In some, unnecessarily immunizing lifeguards and counties from civil liability endangers our residents and visitors, leaving them with no recourse. For these reasons, HHA opposes the bill and respectfully asks that it be deferred. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. Will be available for any questions.
Thank you. Next up is Hawaii State Association of Counties. Not present. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1448. First up, it is Public Defender's Office.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. James Tabe on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. We do think the timing of this bill is inappropriate. And then I think we titled it as a little bit cruel, given the state of the economy. People are struggling. I think this is going to hurt individuals financially when we should be thinking of trying to not tax anymore at this time. Second point here is that I think the previous committee renamed the fee or fine to a surcharge, maybe to get around 291C 161. We still think it's still a fine, and it would violate the intents and purposes of, or the spirit of the law 291C 161. And it brings us to a second problem here, is that if it is no longer a fine and it is a surcharge, the title of the bill here is relating to traffic fines. So it's got to be one or the other. And we might have, we need to, I think my office is going to look into it, study this a little further for the next hearing if this passes through. But other than that, we stand on a written testimony in opposition, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Hawaii County Council District 1.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Luke and members of the Finance Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this legislation. I have written testimony in support. This is also part of the HSAC package, which has testimony in support. As far as this is a revenue generating bill for the counties, that is important to us. But I think more importantly, it's a tool for us to actually deal with parking in areas where we have a significant number of visitors that are causing dangerous situations and nuisance situations for our residents. In 2019, there was a bill 333, which was passed that came from Rep. Nakamura. I have worked with her on the drafting of this language. We're basically trying to create the same tool for us in the counties on our county roads as the state has now on their highways with this piece of legislation. We appreciate the concerns about the language and are willing to continue to work on refining that and making it more acceptable to all parties as it moves through the process, hopefully with your passage today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Tax Foundation. Here, next up, it is Hawaii State Association of Counties. Okay, that's next one is Donald Sakamoto.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members of the finance. My name is Donald Sakamoto. I'm a Kaneohe resident, longtime Kaneohe resident on Windward side. I fully support Bill 1448 HD1 in its intent. I have experienced a lot of issues with the freeway here on H3, eastbound, westbound, as is mentioned in my testimony. The time is to a famous quote I put in my testimony: by failing to prepare, you are failing to fail. So do the right thing, pass this bill, go for broke, and move it on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, that's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 2243. That's no one signed up to testify. So why don't we move on to House Bill 2171. First up, it is the Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, members of the committee, Craig Iha, Deputy Attorney General. The Department of the Attorney General supports this bill because it would lead to establishing a separate and distinct Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and a separate and distinct Department of Law Enforcement, which would administer certain state law enforcement functions. And this will enable each of the agencies to concentrate their focus on their respective unique missions. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Department of Public Safety.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair. Committee members, Max Otani, Department of Public Safety. First of all, the department thanks you for hearing this bill. We strongly support this measure. In summary, the creation of Department of Law Enforcement will consolidate various law enforcement entities and will provide more efficiency, better oversight, standardized training, and more accountability. The renaming and reorganization of the new Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation will allow the new department to focus on inmate programming and rehabilitation. Much of the amendments in this bill was to clarify and ensure that the new Department of Law Enforcement does not infringe on duties and responsibilities of our county police departments. We thank you again for hearing this important bill and would be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Frank Pace, Office of Homeland Security.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for your time. Frank Pace, Administrator for OHS. I stand on my written testimony and support the efforts related into the creation of the Department of Law Enforcement, the improved efficiencies, capabilities, and alignment with both best practices and efforts both within the state of Hawaii and nationwide to advance law enforcement. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Prosecutor's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department stands on its written testimony in support of House Bill 2171. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, it is Pat McCain.
Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee. The Department of Transportation is in support of the measure. In the interest of time, we'd like to stand on our written testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers who signed up on Zoom. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 2082. First up, it is Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. Morisata on behalf of the Department of Agriculture. The department will stand on its written testimony, but would like to express its support for DBED's administration of a Made in Hawaii program and just highlight the comments made in our written testimony that the existing label that we administer is Made in Hawaii for with Aloha, as opposed to just Made in Hawaii, just so that everyone is aware that there is a difference. And that we want to note the fact that a lot of the things that the study proposes have previously been done. So rather than reading the video, we may want to use that information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DBED. Mr. Dennis Ling. Okay, last call for a DBED. If not, that's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1865. First up, it is Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee, Deputy Attorney General Ann Horiuchi. To summarize our testimony, as we noted in the bill, the reference to a free appropriate public education program is not correct. Moreover, it's the DOE that is ultimately responsible for ensuring that IDEA eligible students receive a free appropriate public education. So the bill's reference to per pupil funding disbursements to charter schools, it really shouldn't impact whether those students receive special education and related services. In order to address the concerns in our testimony, we provided you with a proposed revision to the bill, and we ask that you consider it. I'll stand by for any questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1682. First up, it is Next Level Solutions Group.
Aloha and good afternoon. My name, Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita and members of the House Committee on Finance. My name is Anthony Hong, and next to me is Danny Kim. As member and representative of Next Level Solution Group, we stand on our written testimony in support of HB 1682 that authorizes the issuance of special purpose revenue bond to assist us in developing gasification waste to energy facility in Honolulu, Hawaii, that will reduce pollutants in the air, land, and reduce tremendous amount of waste going into landfill. If you have any questions, we will be here to answer.
Thank you very much. Let me see. We also have, we already covered Danny Kim and Tony Hong. How about Mihei Cortez? Hi. Okay. Any questions for anyone? If not, thank you very much for testifying. Next up, it is House Bill 1810. First up, it is Office of Planning.
Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita, this is Mary Alice Evans, the Director of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We'll stand on our testimony in support because we believe this proposed revisions to Chapter 341, not Chapter 343, would allow the Environmental Advisory Council to function more efficiently. Thank you.
Okay, next up is State Environmental Advisory Council.
Right. Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill, and thank you for setting it for hearing. The Environmental Advisory Council will stand on our written testimony. I'm available for questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? Not. Let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 2256. First up, it is DNR.
Aloha, Chair. This is Pua Ayu for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. I'm sorry, my camera's not working. The department will stand on its testimony with comments, and I'm here to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Hawaii State Energy Office.
Aloha, Chair Luke and members of the committee. We stand on our testimony with comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Mary Alice Evans of Office of Planning.
Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita and the members, we offer comments and believe that protecting the environment requires a multi-agency approach through all branches, departments, agencies, the state of Hawaii's government and its counties. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? Now let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 2442. First up, it is Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita. Sandra Matsushima, Executive Officer for the Board of ISLA. The board stands on its written testimony in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers for this bill. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, House Bill 1669. First up, it is Office of Planning.
Thank you, Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita. We commend the legislature on hearing this bill and appreciating the importance of sea level rise for all of our coastal communities. We support the intent of the measure, and we do offer comments with suggested amendments. And If there are any questions, I believe Justine Nihipali may be here to help answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DLNR.
Aloha Chair, committee members, Michael Kane on behalf of DLNR. We support this measure. We stand on our comments. We would note that we in the state make a lot of general statements about adapting to climate change. And we think this is an opportunity to apply these general statements to very specific cases on the ground. And it's something that might provide a role model for other coastal communities that are at threat from rising seas and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Waikiki Beach Special Improvement District Association, Mr. Eggett.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thanks. We also stand on our testimony in support of this measure. We think this will start off a process that's very important both to our communities and to the private sector. I think it's as we move forward in trying to plan for sea level rise as a community, it's important for the private sector to know what the government and the community envisions happening in the future, so that when new developments are planned, they can fit into this new environment that we're going to see as a result of our planning horizon with sea level rise and climate change and the like. Thank you very much for hearing this bill.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's move on to the last bill, House Bill 1721. Oh, sorry, Representative Caruso, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No problem. I have a quick question. I think for Mary Alice or for DLNR, I am just wondering, looking at this bill, if it could be expanded to include the North Shore. So maybe 2 plans. Is that something that's feasible, or?
Representative Caruso, this is going to be challenging for us in terms of capacity as it is. And I think you've noted we have asked in our testimony for an additional position to help manage it. I think we also are aware of the house that fell into the sea a few days ago and the critical issues that face the North Shore. But I think it would take additional capacity. And we note that there are others working on this issue as well. So it's a matter of coordination to ensure that all the stakeholders have input. Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the last bill, House Bill 1721. First up, it is Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, committee members. The department will stand on its written testimony and basically want to note that we, due to our limited resources and capabilities, what we can contribute primarily will be, data and information and consultation with DLNR on those types of matters. In terms of processing meat and those responsibilities have been relinquished to the federal government. So, we really can't or don't have the capacity to comment or contribute on that end. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is DLNR.
Yeah, good afternoon. David Smith, Administrator with the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. We'll stand on our written testimony, supporting with certain amendments, although we would like to recognize the testimony from Department of Agriculture and BNF that raises concerns. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Ulupolo.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Micah Munikata, on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'd like to stand on our testimony supporting the intent of this draft. We'd just like to recommend, if the committee moves this measure forward, to consider bringing back the strategic plan and report to the legislature that was attached to the original draft, I think that would be helpful for those agriculturalists that are looking for some support from the state to see what the plan is to help address this continuously growing problem as it affects farmers and ranchers and their livelihoods. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Maui Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Pam Tompak.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. We support HB 1721 and believe that a comprehensive feral management plan with proactive long-term and short-term measures is desperately needed to fully address the issue, and they should begin the planned implementation measures to manage the feral animal populations. We ask that this section be added back into the bill as it was in the original text. And in addition to supporting DLNR in the creation of this plan, we believe they should also work with the Department of Agriculture and with the counties who are looking at mitigation measures, as well as the community, and create partnerships. In the past, there's been a major focus on fencing as a way to mitigate the issue, but fencing is going to move the herds to new locations. So it is a part of the solution, but it will not solve the problem. We believe this needs to be addressed holistically, and that axis deer, in addition to being a pest, can also be a significant resource for food, with meat sold as well as donated to those in need, along with other products for a variety of markets, of which I've been doing some research on for our local Access Deer Task Force. Given this, we would also like to see the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism included in the planning effort, and for funds to be considered for economic development initiatives to help regional manufacturers utilize this resource and create new and expanded products. So we ask that this bill be passed with our suggested amendments.
Thank you very much. Lastly, it's Roar Rescue of Animal Rights.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Zhu Xiong, and I'm an animal rescue service provider. I have a small organization called Roar Rescue of Animal Rights here where I reside in Kalihi. And I stand on my written testimony in support of and I just like to add, when it comes to animal management practices, exploiting and eradicating shouldn't be a viable option. Instead, I'd advise the legislature to consider implementing initiatives and efforts to protect and care for all animal species and wildlife, because every life matters. Each animal contributes differently in positive and negative ways. It is necessary to conduct research studies and to gather data for each feral animal species to be managed. It's necessary to learn about the ecological significance of each species and its impact on contribution to the environment, and then to form an objective narrative to shape the plan. Feral cats were painted in a bad light by many in the community with the recent measure HB 1987. Yet animal rescues help with the feral cat crisis by rescuing ferals and then adopting them to people who then train the kittens to be ESAs. Emotional support animals is approved medically by psychologists. This kitten provides joy and happiness. At the federal level, the US Department of Justice and American with Disabilities Act recognizes that emotional support animals provide a medical service. For these reasons, it can be concluded feral cats have tremendous intrinsic value. Wild pigs are bad for the environment because they cause a lot of damage to the landscape. They eat a lot of vegetations, causing native plant extinction as well as soil erosion. But wild pigs are responsible for dispersing seeds and planting new plants and trees and flowers. Chickens are nuisances, but chickens eat plant destroying bugs like ticks, slugs, grasshoppers, grubs, beetles in a very short time. For gardens, organic farmers rely on chickens as natural pesticides. And lastly, I'd like to conclude, it was interesting to read about feeding the homeless with the carcasses. I could advise another idea or strategy. Land can be designated for animal sanctuaries, like that is sanctioned in HRS 13-126-3 for DLNR. That is a chapter about designation of wildlife sanctuaries. The animal sanctuaries can simultaneously be utilized for a dual purpose of being a farm for the homeless. The homeless will have a place to live, and they can learn to grow food. Instead of giving them handouts to perpetuate their lifestyle, give them vocational opportunities so that they can elevate their life. Farming does not require a high school degree or much experience. Also, there is a way to create agricultural sustainability and symbiotic agroecological practices with different crops and the feral animals the legislature seeks to manage. There is a way to plant specific crops to work in harmony with feral animals. Personally, I don't view managing feral animals as a nuisance. It is a fun experience to learn about nature. Nature and wildlife is phenomenally amazing. And by the way, I'm dressed up like a doe. It's a poon for DOE, Department of Education. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Any questions? If not, let's recess for decision making. Committee on Finance will come to order. We will be doing decision-making on our 1 p.m. agenda. First up, it is House Bill 1536, House Draft 1. This is the judiciary's budget for the judiciary. The worksheets will be, I don't know, the worksheets going after. So essentially, the various items requested by the judiciary has been generously approved by the members. The members met and discussed all the items requested by the judiciary. For the operating budget, we will provide the worksheets and the CIP budget to the judiciary after this hearing. The only thing that the legislature added is a placeholder for civil legal services. So with that, that's the budget that we'll be passing. Any questions, members? Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Yeah, members, we're voting on House Bill 1536 HD1 with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye, Representative Bronco. Aye. Eli.
Aye.
Hope.
Aye.
Iligan. Aye. Kobayashi.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Nishimoto. Aye. Caruso.
Aye.
Sayama. Aye. Tam. Aye. Todd.
Aye.
Wildberger.
Aye.
McDermott.
Yes.
Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1539, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Representative Kobayashi.
can one of those technical amendments be the word or and for sitting and full-time judges?
I don't think that's a technical amendment, so we will bring that up with the judiciary
Close.
chair. Okay, with that, any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1539 HD1 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Are there any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Next up is House Bill 1870, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, blanking out the amount and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 1870 HD1. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 2365. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 2365 as is. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 886. Recommendation is to pass as a HD1, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 886 with amendments. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1462. Recommendation is to pass as a HD1, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 1462 with amendments. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1447, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? Please take the vote.
House Bill 1447 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1448, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, blanking out the fee amount and the defective date and technical non-substantive changes. And we will also bring up to the judiciary chair to rectify the issues about whether it's a fine or a surcharge and whether it would fit in the title. With that, any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1448 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
McDermott to no.
Okay, so noted. Any other no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 2243, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 2243 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Any no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 2171, House Draft 2. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 2171 HD2 as is. Any reservations? No's. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 2082, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, blanking out the amount and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 2082 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1865 HD1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, voting on House Bill 1865 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations or noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1682, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1682 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Reservation. Oh, wait, 16, yeah. Okay. Reservations for Pam.
1862, yeah.
Oh,
1682.
Yeah.
Okay, reservations for Tam. Any other reservations? Any noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1810. Recommendation is to pass as a HD1, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 1810 with amendments. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 2256, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 2256 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Noes?
McDermott, no.
So noted. Any others? Adopted. Two, four, two. 2442.
Next up is House Bill 2442, House Draft 1. This will be deferred. Next up is House Bill 1669, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the
Chair,
vote. Yes.
I just before we vote, I'd like to strongly urge the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to consider expanding the scope of this pilot program and overall plan to include the North Shore. It's not just a house that fell in the ocean. This is the whole strip of the 7 Mile Miracle, and it's an enormous tourism driver. And it's of deep concern to the whole state. So I strongly urge you to reconsider that position.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, members voting on House Bill 1669 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Noes?
Thank you. Next up is House Bill 1721, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
House Bill 1721 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up, it's a decision making only. This is from Friday, February 25, on the 11 a.m. agenda. This is House Bill 2000, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? Not, please take the vote.
Okay, House Bill 2000 HD1. Any reservations? Noes?
Oh, Representative Caruso.
So noted. Reservation for Representative Peruso. Any other reservations? All others vote aye. Adopted.
Thank you. And that's it for today's hearing. And we have one other hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. So we'll see the members tomorrow. Thank you. Adjourn.